Hello everyone. So today we are going to do the repository implementation and the repository itself. Repository implementation and the repository are two different classes that we are going to do, and we are going to learn how the repository actually communicates with the database in Android. Okay, now in Android the database is room library or the SQL library. Okay, now, if you haven't seen the previous video of this series, then you must see it. The link is given in the description, or there's an annotation coming up in your screen. You can click it and you can see it. Okay, so that video will tell you an overview of what we are doing here, what application we are making. It's a very simple application, the note taking application, but it will give you everything, every information of the application, like the architecture we are using, like the programming language we are using, what the architecture signifies, and why are we specifically choosing that architecture. And it will also tell you what is data access object or DAO, and it will let you know how we have made the DAO and how we'll integrate the DAO into the repository. Okay, now I recommend you to see that video and then move on with this video. And for the people who have already seen, let's move to my screen and let's see where the repository lies in the MVVM structure, and let's actually explore the repository and let it know that how we can actually integrate the data access object and the repository together. So let's move to the screen. Let's pull up a Chrome. As you can see, there is a structure of MVVM in this whole picture, and we have already made the model, the room, and the SQLite database. Okay, now this part is been made. Okay, I cannot actually annotate here, but let's see that this part is made. Okay, the model, the room, and the SQLite part is made. Okay, we have made it in the previous video where we have integrated the DAO, the entities. Okay, now what is model? Just a quick overview. Model is basically how I like to see my data to be structured. Okay, or the data coming from the database is structured in that way so we can store it somewhere. Okay, that is model. Now what is room? Room is basically the library which provides us the space for our data, and that's all. Now in these whole thing, it communicates with the repository, and then the repository communicates with your view model, and then the view model communicates with your view on the upper hand. Okay, now why this repository lies in the middle is the very basic question that you need to understand. Now repository can be a thing where I can actually transform my data according to the need. Okay, well, it can also be done in view model, but repository actually takes the raw data coming from it and gives me the data that I need, data that I need to see. Okay, the pretty data or the data which is beautified and I can actually read it. Okay, so it sends the view model that kind of data. Okay, now repository also has one basic necessity or one basic working that it needs to perform is be the it's to keep an enclosed capture between the model and the view model. Okay, so it cannot directly access the model or it cannot harm the model in any such way. So it actually keeps your application very much integrated and very much integral in its part. Okay, now let's move to the programming stuff. Okay, let's open our note taking application. As you know, I have just opened it here. Now as you can see, we have already made a few packages and stuff. Okay, now screen, util, view model, the repository room in that model. Okay, now why have I kept model in a repository inside model? It's a very mere thought that I have always in my mind, that model is basically repository, room, and the data access object. Everything is just model. So I just think like that, but it's not the point. It's just how I structure my project. Okay, now I just want you to know that we can delete this once we have made a new Kotlin class in repository, which is just notes repository. Okay, Now this, okay, we'll do it later. We'll do everything here later. Fine. We'll do the git push and pull later. Okay. I'll tell you how we actually do the git management or the version management here, but not for now. Okay. Now, as you can see, there is one dev file which of no use. In the previous video, we know why we have created, just because we need to create different packages with different names. So that is why we created a dev, so that we can make as numerous packages at what we want. Okay. Now we can delete the dev package, but make sure that you have already added the node repository class here. Okay, then delete it, so that it doesn't get merged with the model package. Okay, now as you can see, we have made the model, the object, how my data will look like. Okay, then we have made the DAO, or the functions that will do the work for my data, like it will insert, it will update, it will delete, it will query. It will query three types. It will get me all the nodes, then it will get me all the nodes by date order, then it will get me all the nodes by priority order. Okay, and then there is the database itself. Now database is just an abstract class which tells me this is the DAO, or this is the functions that I need to perform. It takes the entities and version. It's all given in the previous video. Please see it. Okay. Now let's move to the repository. Now repository is not a class that we all, if you don't know, repository is basically a list of functions as the DAO was. Okay, same as the DAO, but you can actually change your suspend functions if you want, but you need some like some coroutine functions here, which we won't be doing. It's very complicated. It's not very complicated, not taken in hand that you know how to do it, but we won't do it for now, as we know that it's basically mere thing that we need to do. It's, see, the repository is basically interface. Okay, it's an interface of nodes repository which have numerous numbers of list, not numerous but the same as number of in the DAO. First we have the suspend fun of insert. Okay, just we'll just say add nodes. This takes a variable of nodes, I guess. Yes, so it takes a variable of nodes, which is basically nodes. Okay, now just let me give a few comment to enter nodes. Okay, now there's one more, which is yeah, it's basically the suspend functions and the same. What I can do is I can just copy these. Okay, I can just copy these functions, all the functions. What have I done? What is this? Fine, I got it. Okay, what I can do is I can just copy all of these functions. Okay, and I'll just paste it here without the annotations. Okay, because basically annotation doesn't mean that, oh, it just gives you where the annotation comes. It basically means that those functions are for the DAO, and where there are no annotations and the same functions are there, so that basically means that those functions are for the repository. Okay, now that's all we need right now. Okay, and we also need one thing, but we'll do it further in the series. Okay, now as you know, I have the same names, but I need to change the names because it will crash when I'm going to write it in my application. Then it will crash with the other names because there are two functions with the same name. So I'll just update it. Now this is update notes, so I'll write update with the okay, update notes. This one is different notes, or just I'll write update note, delete, and this will be delete note. Okay, now get all nodes and get nodes by date, fun get nodes by priority. Okay, I'll leave them as it is. Okay, so that it doesn't create a problem with everyone. Now let's go to, okay, now we have made the nodes repository. Okay, we haven't made the nodes repository implementation. Now, what is this nodes repository implementation? Okay, now we have made these functions, okay, but we haven't implemented these functions anywhere. So we need to implement those functions somewhere so that we can get that data. Now, that is where the node repository comes in. Now, node repository implementation comes in. Yes, so nodes repository IMPL. Now the short form for implementation is IMPL, which I like to add. Okay, I'll just don't ask me again. This will generally have a, what do I call that? It will have a parenthesis which will take you few variables, which is private val DAO, which is of node DAO. Node DAO. Okay, which is I guess what's the name of DAO? I don't know. Room DAO. Okay. Okay. Now this will extend the nodes repository, and then we'll actually we'll override all the members, and we have implemented basically all the functions that I wrote in the repository class. Okay, now here we can return the data as we like, but what we do is we just return the data that is coming from the DAO. Just do DAO dot is it add nodes? Yes, add nodes and nodes. That's simple. We'll be doing the same thing with every function. Return dot this is subject. Okay. Yes, so this is all done. Okay, now the nodes repository implementation is done, and now we can move to the further video, but let me explain what we did right now. Okay, now what I did is I made a few functions. Okay, now these functions does not generally give you any idea what the repository does, but it is an interface, and if you are into programming, you might know what is an interface. Interface is just a communication class between one class to another class without accessing the private informations. We all know that, right? Now, in what we did is in node repository.kt file. In that file, we made an interface of node repository and added few functions which basically correspond the functions of the DAO. Okay. Then in the node repository implementation, what we did is we took a private val of DAO. Okay. Now this a private val of DAO, room DAO, and we extended the node repository. Now what is extended? When we extend an interface in a class, we generally mean that we will be implementing or overriding that whole list of functions that I wrote in the interface, and then we can return any type of not any type, but a specific type of data that I have specified I'll return, and then I can pretty much shape the data in any form that I need. Okay, but generally, in all general ways, what we do is we just return or channel the data that is coming from the room to DAO to repository, and then repository to the view model, and then in the view model we just shape the data. Okay, we don't shape it in the repository, but yes, what you can do is you can just do like val with notes, val note is equals to DAO dot no yeah insert note, insert notes. Now see, you won't get anything here because insert note doesn't actually uh, provide you anything. It doesn't actually returns you anything. What it returns is this one. Yes, here what we can do is it gives me like var notes is equals to dot get all notes. Now here what I can do is I can just take notes dot let, and then I have a IT variable which I can just like I can call a collector, and then I can just iterate through it, and I can give you selective nodes. Okay, now I can do stuff like that, or even I can do is I can just take nodes dot update if there is a no, if copy is there now, or I can just do is I can just write nodes dot run, and it will give me an IT which will give me a variable which will just tell, like I can just shape that whole array in one form, whatever form I like. Okay, there are many more methods that I can do it, but what we do is we just channel it through a basic method. We channel it through a basic method. Okay, and then we'll shape the whole data, or we'll make it look what I want to look it alike in the view model. Fine. So that's all for today, and in the next video we are going to learn how we'll make the view model and how we'll shape our data according to our own requirements, and then we'll also know how the data will transfer to be channeled from repository to view model and then to the view. Okay, and we'll also know why view model is a very important and very essential part of MVVM architecture. So this is Ashmit Aryan. You are seeing Dev Dojo Hub, signing out. Your loud ass,